going to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
We have Arlene Zortman.
Here.
Josh Rinaldi.
Here.
Tom DeBee.
Yes.
Glenn Pepper.
Here.
Molly O'Donnell.
Here.
Harold Dominguez.
Here.
Sarah Arney.
Here.
Quincy Williams.
Here.
And Tracy DeFrancesco.
Here. Okay.
And me. Oh, Kendra, sorry, Kendra. Right.
Oh, now we can hear her. Good. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's take a minute to just look at the actual minutes and any concerns. Otherwise, I need a motion to approve that. Cooper?
Yeah.
You get, okay, so Glenn? Okay, well, I'll second it. All in favor?
I'll abstain because I wasn't here. Me too.
You and me? Okay. All right. And I don't see any public invited to be heard unless there's somebody on the thing already. Okay, we're going to start with Quincy today. So that would be occupancy report, property updates.
Morning, everybody. Nothing has changed from the report since last time we met. Asking Meadows is still at 7 vacants. Summer has done a good job. We started off with 9 beginning of last month. Summer's done a good job of trying to find people. With the help of Kendra, we have adjusted the budget to where we are offering different rents for residents. So we're kind of just starting at the top and going down the list, you know, the 1412 to the 1250 to the 1098 to see if we qualify for that. We have a lot of 30% over there, but they've been doing a good job of marketing and trying to get those people filled. So at 7, it would have been 5, but we had a death and somebody was on notice and they're moving out. So that is why the number is at 7 right now. We do have a move-in for Aspen's November 1st. And Summer told me that she's working to see if she can get somebody like 30% yesterday, which I'm pretty sure will do. Only answer 847, so they're not that hard to fill. Yeah, that's the only difference in the property. Every other property is above 95% with Aspen Meadows neighborhood and Briarwood sitting at full occupancy. And then we've also put the numbers from last November to this November at the bottom. Vacancy loss, a little under 100 grand, but we are chipping away still.
Oh, here he comes. No. Oh. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Quincy. Now we're going to be ready, set up and then take over. Are we ready to continue? Okay.
Property updates. I've updated this one completely. 3 vacant units at Spring Creek. Unit 206 has a scheduled moving date. John has not got me that moving date, but they are approved. They're just waiting to finish up their 30-day notice with the landlord they're at right now. No updates for Ball River. As we mentioned, seen here neighborhood. The camera installation is completed. But,
Yes, and that's online.
and it's online. It's working. The permits here for the Hearthstone, there was a fire a while ago. The permits have been issued. Drywall remediation is underway, and they're projecting to have the unit completed. The drywall completed by the end of October. No property updates for the lodge. The suites elevator project is underway. The suites elevator will be operational in the next week, but I put the 31st just to be safe. They have been going at that for a while now, which is good. We finally got them to do that work. And then the door project was awarded over at the suites as well. And that contract is they're supposed to start at the beginning of November. And I can give you guys an update on that next month. And then there's no other property updates for Briarwood or BOM.
On Hearthstone, where it was 2 units that were affected, right?
Yep. 206, 106.
Did those people move out
They
or
moved into other units here.
are they going to stay there? Or
They're
move
going to
back?
stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And drywall should be done at the end of October. And then once that's done, it should be a lot easier to get that unit finished. So I'm projecting to have that unit back, those 2 units back by sometime in November.
Okay.
Yeah. Yard implementations, the waiting list is online. It's fully optional and operational online. I've been going through them for ascent. I didn't start the lease up, but I kind of wanted to gauge on where we were.
Mhm.
And we're gonna wait. Just gonna wait, give you guys an update on that. We still have quite a few units over there. I went through all 4 of the wait list. I went through all 4 of the preferences, and we are at 17 people right now that actually qualify for those units, not including the 18 PPV units that we have. A lot of the people that applied are 30% residents wanting PPV unit. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 46 people who are on the LIHTC waiting list who should be on the PPV waiting list. So that just adds to Tracy's 300 plus waiting list that she has. I gave her those applications so she could cross-reference them. So I will wait to give a full update until we get closer to that date, maybe December. That's a little better gauge on that.
So when somebody's applying for the wait list, do they actually have to select which one they want to apply under? Okay.
So
Most likely. I mean, we couldn't put them on the PUD because it's closed, but they're probably on it.
yeah,
So I'm gonna just press the reference, yeah.
we told them we opened it up for everybody to apply, just in case, but I sat and thought about it. If you don't qualify for a 30, or if you do qualify for a 30, more than likely you're not going to qualify for a 40. The jump is that big. So like I said, once Tracy does her reference, we can tell a little bit better where we're at.
Well, Quincy's here. What'd you say about Aspen Medicine? We're down, we had an increase of 1, so we have 7 rentable units.
Yeah, there was a death.
Yeah.
And somebody's on notice right now. Summer does have somebody moving November 1st. And we're calling the 30% wait list because we have 130% there. So we can get that one. We get an application on that today.
Right.
It's positive she can find somebody for that. But we're just going through Kendra, move some numbers around. So we've been offering the regular 1412, and then we went down to 1250, and then we went down to 1098. So right now we're finding more people in that 1098 range. I told Summer, let's try for the 1250 first, and if that doesn't work, we'll try regular first. If that doesn't work, on the 1250. All specials go down to the 1098.
One of the things, the reason why I wanted to bring that up, one of the things that Molly and Lauren and I have been talking about is those 50 and 60% units are a problem. What's interesting is we're talking to people that are just market rate units that are at that level. They're not having the same issues. So we talked to one individual that has about 600 units in the community, and he was indicating he doesn't have that issue. And frankly, we don't have it in other places. So we're trying to figure out what is it that is different about AMSA versus some of these other units. The one thing that's oddly showing itself is they don't have dishwashers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Actually, yep, it's a good point,
Yeah.
because we had somebody turn down because of that.
and so we started evaluating what does it cost to get some of those, because the smaller units, the smaller counter dishwashers, to say if that's a decision point of why some people move in and don't move in, what does that look like? So we're running some pricing models on that. The other thing that we're finding is exercise equipment is another piece as to why people don't rent. And so we've talked to Lauren about looking at some space on the 3rd floor, I think. So we can get some exercise equipment and then talk to them about a lot of the gyms in the area. We see this in fire. As they're rotating their exercise equipment out, they donate it to various groups, and to see if we can get into some of those donations with some of those gyms, to see if we can have some semblance of exercise location for this facility because we think that's a problem.
Amenities, just a difference in amenities.
Yeah,
Gotta look
so
at that.
Mhm.
amenities are a problem. We also think in 50 to 60% AMI units that there's a what's the word I'm looking for, Molly? Just a perception that people have of affordable housing, and so then if they can straddle the line and not be in affordable housing where they have to do income qualifications and some of the other things, they're making decisions in the market. So the 50 and 60s are interesting for us right now.
Yeah, so on the senior side, we know that that doesn't match up well with, if you're only on living off of social security, a 50 and 60% unit is really tough. When it comes to the non-senior side, we did have it, though, that wait list for the 50 and the 70 and 80% units at Ascent that are currently advertised rents at about 60% AMI. Those were slower to fill than the others. And that is where really, when it comes to really multifamily units, how do we look compared to the market? Because you can get in a 60% unit, but we want to see what the market rents look like and what is the trade-off. You have to do more paperwork with us. Maybe the amenities are different. So we're trying to look at that on the multifamily side. On the senior side, when it comes to Aspens versus Spring Creek, Fall River, 50 and 60 is still harder to hit, but Fall River, Spring Creek, dishwashers, bit newer, exercise equipment. So we're trying to see what, and so before, when we were offering the same rents in a different market, that's not working now. So that's why they're talking about lowering rents in Aspens.
The other thing that we're exploring is, we have the requirement 2 times income.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we talked about, and this is really a product more of my experience with my kids, is there an opportunity, and Kendra's chasing this within Yardi to do guarantors. So a lot of times I think a sibling or a child may be willing to sign to be the guarantor for a older adult that may not be able to meet the income qualifications. And so we're also exploring that as well as another tool to kind of bridge some gaps.
When we were at EMS the other day, there was a lot of concern about Social Security is not really keeping up with the rate and rents.
Right.
And I know at least one lady said that she's estimated about 2 years and then she'll have to move out. Wondering how much more we'll see around.
You will hear about that during budget.
Yes. So we're now starting to, we're finding that there's a lot of things that we can do that some of the market rate units do, guarantors, things like that, but we think in that, an income average 70, 80s, and then even 50, 60, certain properties, we're gonna have to start getting a little bit more creative.
Okay.
Because if you spend $30,000 on putting countertop dishwashers, the ROI of getting those units filled is pretty short, if that makes a difference.
Quincy has to leave at 9:30, so, yeah.
I just wanted to jump in with Quincy here
Yeah.
and say these are things on this that might.
So safe to say we're still trying. We're putting our heads together. We're trying to do everything we can because we do realize that, it is an issue over there.
Well, just so that you know that at AMS, at Senior Properties the other day at Aspen, Summer did say she was going to have Ascent as the property manager.
Yeah, we're still working through those kinks.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still working through those kinks. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you. Okay, going back. Organizational updates, board vacancy recruitment. It's, I wouldn't know any on.
Wonderful. That's what I was gonna ask. So, the recruitment remains open through this Friday, the 17th. We have 4 applications to date. We will get, well, they say they'll send them. We already have the applications and work on scheduling interviews after the 17th. So starting the week of the 20th, we'll do that. Board interviews, they'd like us to complete between October 23rd and November 20th. I think maybe we pick who would like to participate this year. And then today we can maybe schedule that. Of course, we don't have Jenna or Carrie. Any board member can participate this year since we don't have any existing members that we're interviewing. So I was hoping to get 2 volunteers and then start looking at schedules. So Arlene, sounds like you are
I
interested.
would be interested.
Is anybody else interested in doing the interviews? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So do you mind if we look at calendars and get something for maybe early November? And we could coordinate that offline if you need to, but just maybe for time's sake, we could do that. But I'll get in touch with you all. My other question is, would you like to relook at any interview questions or use the ones that we used back in June? Okay, so we can coordinate that over email too. Then we have to have our recommendation memos back to the clerk's office by November 21st. Council interviews will happen December 6th. And the appointments will be made December 16th. And just a reminder, we're filling for 1 term that goes through June 2027. All right, so I'll coordinate with Tom and Arlene offline about schedules and with the whole group about the interview questions.
Items for input to the Board of Commissioners.
So Tracy will be taking the first item.
Tracy, I guess you're first.
Well, right now, the waiting list for the suites is managed by the voucher program specialists. And what we've been finding is when we open up the waiting list, we get a lot of applicants. But because of the type of applicants that we have, by the time we get to the waiting list, we had 130 people still on the waiting list and I did a search and only 4 of them were wanting to stay back on. A lot of people.
Just to confirm, this is for LHA's 41 vouchers.
41 vouchers,
Yeah.
yeah.
Clinica, formerly MHP, manages the other half of the vouchers. So this is only for LHA's half.
So what we've done is, we thought that it might be better if we change the way that we do the waiting list and do it through the same way that Clinica does it, through coordinated entry. Because they work with the homeless, they have contact with the homeless. And so what we have to do in order to do that is to amend our admin plan. There's a couple sections in the admin plan that we'll have to amend. And then we'll also have to change the tenant selection policy. So instead of the housing authority doing the waiting list, they would be referred to LHA.
That's only for the suites?
It's only.
Oh, it's only for the suites. So basically we're centralizing the PDD portion with Clinica.
Yes. Not with Clinica,
Oh.
yeah, the way that Clinica gets
The way
their
that they
applicants, yeah.
constitute.
And it will be different. The tenants that will be selected are gonna be preferenced on not being homeless as long, being younger. So, and we'll still go through the managers will still go through a background check and a landlord check.
Do they do any kind of assessment of the viability of the client, but their ability to succeed in that?
They do in a sense, depending on where the client is, but they can't really, you know, if they're going to be a good tenant or not. They know their criminal background checks. I mean, what their criminal history looks like. And that will be taken into account when they select somebody for the suite.
I think part of that we found, and Sarah can jump in. I think the closer we are to coordinated entry here locally, the higher the success rate. What we really found is when they were pulling people in through the state system, success rate was pretty low.
Right.
Yeah, and it's, I think, just because they've established relationships with the coordinated entry group, whether that is Hope or All Roads or even Public
Lead, yeah.
Safety, Lead, there's more of a support system there locally that we're just more successful now.
And we're also seeing, because of that, those relationships, that people have more ownership of living here in Longmont versus people coming up from Denver. Yeah, and just the connection and the relationships are pretty significant.
And they also get them ready,
Mhm.
like getting their IDs, their birth certificates, which just is a real hardship on homeless people. So they help get that information together. And then when they refer them, all of that information is there. So we don't have to wait until they go through the process of getting it.
Had the suites for a while and now I've got plenty of, other than this, I don't understand what you're saying. We have done any kind of analysis to say why we have issues with some people. And is there a trend?
I mean, I would say generally, the biggest issue is drug use.
Mental health and
Drug use.
so those two combined.
Well, and the preference is homelessness and that comes with those
Right. Yeah,
barriers there.
it just is, and
That's why our house rules are super important.
right.
For folks. That's how we hold them accountable to, making poor choices and have, bad behavior.
So I think that local connections has shown to make a difference. Also bringing in our clinical mental health services it's a night and day difference between the culture and ability for those to really be successful in staying housed there, I think.
And I think holding them accountable now for their actions and following through, being consistent.
We give some amount of leeway.
Excuse me.
We give them some amount of leeway.
But we do, we do give a notice of new lease violations. And work with them on any barriers that they have that keeps them from succeeding.
We do follow a retention plan that we bring in the support services to help assist, and really eviction's the last resort, and we've operated like that for the last 5 years. But I think 4 or 5 years ago, there was just not a lot of accountability towards
Some of
behavior.
these people are a lot smarter.
Oh,
I mean, that negatively is just a given their backgrounds and all.
Yeah, I think we're seeing distinct issues that, so the good things. And it's good and bad. So Sarah and I have met with people that have given us information that has led to significant arrest for drug sales on property. One was information, ended up with over a pound of meth and $15,000 in their car. And so I think, so the accountability's there. I think, does it mean that they're not doing it? No, it doesn't. It just means that if they get a sense that we're starting to figure out what's going on, people will give us the information we need to deal with the, frankly, individuals that are going into these facilities to prey on the other individuals in it. And what's interesting is I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with someone who works with people in recovery. And the individual was calling out locations where they could live that they're choosing not to live because of the rampant amount of drug abuse in those locations. And so some people in recovery are choosing, at least to this individual, to not be housed rather than be housed in a location where there's rampant drug use. And that was really interesting for me to hear. The good news is the suites was not on that list that they talked about. So I think we're making progress. Does it mean that we don't run into these issues? Absolutely not. I think we're not seeing the magnitude of the issues that we need to see at the location. So that's getting better.
Yeah.
Pound them out for $15,000 while they live in affordable housing.
So-
And its election plan is different too.
Right.
The suites. and-
That person lived in Zinnia.
They didn't live in suites.
So where it says households experiencing homelessness are at risk of homelessness, is there a way, or are we even allowed to take a look at preference to Longmont residents?
That's part of
Kind
the
of coordinated
local.
That's a coordinated.
They can look at that in
Yeah.
It's a little broader than
County.
it's a county.
county, so it's not specific to Longmont.
But we do try to get people that are through the Longmont system first in coordinated.
Right, and they have to want to live in Longmont, so if they're in Boulder. There's a lot of people that will turn down
Oh, yeah.
Longmont to stay in Boulder.
So we'll be bringing the admin plan revisions and the tenant selection plan revisions to the board next Tuesday for consideration for that.
So on the 2026 proposed budget and payment standards,
It's,
Kendra will cover that.
okay.
Payment standards are in her budget proposal.
So for the 2026 proposed budget, part of our budget challenges this year is always revenue uncertainty. We have a lot of properties that have HCV vouchers. Those are all portable. Last year we budgeted at 75%. This year we're going to budget at 85% of those vouchers. Just to give a little extra money and budget into these properties, along with each property manager is understanding how they have to also manage their budgets. If they're having more expenditures or more vacancies, they have to kind of balance that out. One of the things we are finding is that our senior properties with 50 and 60% units, we are struggling to get them filled. We also struggled this year that the rent increases also had people leave because it was just too much. So we've had some of those as well. As you can see from this slide, a 50% unit is $1,412. And if you do 2 times the rent, that individual is going to have to make $2,824. And what we're seeing, that sometimes isn't the case when you're on a fixed income on Social Security. And then a 60% is $1,695. 2 times the rent is $3,390. So we have been making some exceptions. Lauren's gone down maybe 10% on the 2 times the rent to see, just not to make somebody fully rent burdened in those units. But we are also evaluating each property's budget, where everybody sits, and can we reduce the rent on those units to get somebody housed and still meet operational costs. Employment was another budget challenge. We are moving positions to 101% of market, and the allocation of those positions.
Hear
Does somebody-
us, Kendra?
Oh, no, I did. Does somebody want to jump in?
Kendra,
I
just a
can't.
quick,
I can't see you on camera because my presentation is on my laptop screen. So you just have to holler because I can't see you guys.
Go ahead.
sorry, the 1412, that's the actual cost to the tenant?
That is the Chaffa rents. So that is on a 50% unit. The Chaffa rents right now is $1,412 for a 1-bedroom unit. So that's what we're evaluating in whole, like what we were looking at, like why I allowed the 1 unit to go down to 1098 at Aspen Senior, is we looked at the units in whole, like how many HCV vouchers, because obviously we get more money with the HCV vouchers, and kind of take a look at what's our average rent? Are we getting more or are we getting less? And can we make the adjustment to go downward and still meet operations? Does anybody else have any questions on this slide? Go ahead.
Okay,
I'll repeat the question for you, Kendra. With the exceptions to the 2 times the rent standard within reason, he's wondering what within reason looks like.
Well, what Summer did this last time was give them what their income was, what they're actually making, and then gave it to Lauren to say like, okay, what would she be willing to go down? And it was she kind of evaluated it to be 10%. The problem is that what we kind of talked about is we don't necessarily go through this full income exercise and what their debt is. We don't collect the debt piece of it. So they really have to be comfortable with his and what their actual debt is to make sure that they're moving into something that's feasible for them. But right now she only did 10%.
My concern is I see this a lot in eviction court, that when the state lowered the requirement from 3 to 2, people just can't make it 50%.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, not in the rental world, but in the home ownership world. When the council was considering inclusionary housing ordinances and we were looking at the debt to income ratio, under HUD standards, it's 30%. What we were finding is that even after all of the adjustments on the requirements, after the housing bust, there were still banks that were lending upwards to people with a debt to income ratio of 40%, but they were taking a comprehensive look at their entire financial picture. And so we don't do that. So you could theoretically have someone, and this is another thing we're thinking about, that may not be at the 2 times the income piece, but may have no debt at all and may not have a car and some other things that add to those living expenses. And we've started the conversation about, making it harder to fill units. Do we need to take a slightly deeper dive into each individual's financial position? Similar to and again, I learned this through my kids as they're renting. That's what market rate parks do. You're running your credit reports and other things and taking a more holistic look at your financial position versus just this or this. And I think we see that on the for sale side, that every one of us in this room are in a different position financially, depending on how we do things. And, someone may be 3 times that, but they may have more debt behind it. And I think that's something we're going to have to start thinking through.
Well, and you mentioned the guarantors. Have we ever gone down that avenue?
We're going down that now.
But we've never done.
We've never done.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And I think
Yeah,
especially in our age restricted communities, we do hear that a lot, where a child is like trying to help their parents find housing, and I think would be willing to be a guarantor, but the system doesn't allow it. And that's very similar to me with my 93-year-old mom in Texas. If she ran into that position, it would be easy enough to say, no, here's what it is, I'll be the guarantor. I could get her into a market rate unit. I couldn't get her into our unit. So not really an answer, but I think it's something we've got to figure out.
so to
And
make sure that,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
so to make sure that I understand this correctly, so the 1-bedroom unit is 1412. So 2 times the rent is 28.24. Is that what a person pays market? Is that what they're actually paying?
The 2824 would be the income they're getting on a monthly basis. So they would have to get the 2824 on a monthly basis to be housed in a 50% unit whose rents is 1412.
What is the market then for a 50%? What is the market for a 1-bedroom unit?
Quincy and I looked it up this morning and it was 1586.
1586. Okay.
And it's a hard number to
It's a lot. of
finger on
details,
because
yeah.
depending on where you're looking, what we're trying to figure out is they may say the rent is 1,500. If you have a car, they may charge you anywhere from $10 to $100 for parking.
A month.
They may charge you other fees associated with what you're, and so while it's not rent, it's still an expense that you have to pay to live in some of these locations. And so that's the hard piece in really understanding what truly is the market rent, because they all do it different in a different way. And again, the guy we were talking to, he said, I don't charge all of these other fees. So his is probably a pretty true number. Whereas you look at another facility that's not. So it's hard to really put your finger on what that number is.
Early in the year, on the city side, the housing team just got a grant to do more housing needs assessment work, updating it and then adding on some elements. And that's something we're hoping to do where there's not a good data source out there right now that shows the true rent when you consider all those fees. So we're hoping to get more information on that early in 26.
So I'm sorry, I managed to confuse myself now. If the unit rate is 1412, the market rate is 1500,
1580.
1580, where does the 50% come in?
The income.
But I thought the income had to be 2824.
So the 50% AMI, that's really just means that in Longmont, half the people, 100% AMI means half the people in Longmont earn below that and half earn above that.
No, I understand that. It's about 100 and some thousand now.
Right. So for a 50% AMI person, the Chaffa rents are based on what they could reasonably afford with using 30% of their income. So 30% of your income should be used on your rent. You need to have more of that in income to make sure that we are not cost burdening you on your housing and you have room to pay for other things. So that's why the incomes coming in at 28 is important so that you are still only paying 30% of that income below that.
So I think where the confusion comes in, at least for me, is that if I want to move into one of your apartments, it's going to cost me $14.12, more or less. But if I want to take a market one, it's $15.80. The confusion is the 50%, which, if you're thinking 50% of the $15.80, which is what I was always thinking it's really
It's your
it's
income.
income.
Mhm.
It's 50% on the income.
So it's not 50% of a market rate rent.
Yeah.
And then it gets more complicated now because now within the market rate rentals, we're in a period of, we went from no housing stock on the rental market where the rents were just like this on a regular basis. There's a lot of market rate housing stock coming into the system, which is creating competition within the market rate folks where you're seeing a lot of concessions and other things. Now, what happens though is once that housing stock gets restricted again in the future, which it will, then you get back in a situation where the rents start increasing again. And so we're in a bit of a period where rents are stagnant or lowering a little bit. But what then tends to happen is when they make the concession, someone will move into a location because of all of that. Then when they come in to re-up their rent, and that, you know, when they re-sign, it can go up, but right now it's not.
So to,
It's an interesting cycle that's playing on the market side.
So
so
just-
right now, so Glenn, using the Chapa rent limits, $1,580 for a 1-bedroom. That is running about, what do we say, 1-bedroom or studio? Said 1-bedroom. That is running about 57% AMI, meaning a person that earns 57% AMI can afford that 1,580. But remember, the 1,580 doesn't include fees. So let's say your fees per month are $300 extra. That means the effective rents are running more like a 70% AMI person can afford those. So it's more that it's you can take those rent dollars and then you can run it across and see what income a household earns that could reasonably afford that and still not be cost burden.
Yeah, I think where I got confused was the 50% example.
Yeah.
Because the rent just happens to be 2 times the rent.
Oh, yeah,
Happens
yeah.
to be-
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, in the middle of your discussion, I figured out what.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, I mean, it's hard because I think
I'm confused anyway. I tried to take this budget and back into it through a spreadsheet. Now I'm really confused.
Now Colorado law is changing and it's prohibiting most of the junk fees as of January 1st, 2026. So they'll have to show that it's rent.
What's
They
considered a
want
junk?
true cost
Yeah,
to it,
Yeah.
to everybody, so you can have comparison.
right.
Right.
parking.
Pest control. I think parking might be excluded from junk fees because it's an actual like space that you're renting. But things like pest control fee,
Amenities fee.
amenities, like you have to
Admin fee.
pay an extra fee to
Yeah.
use the gym or whatever.
Yeah.
So parking's interesting because it depends on the complex. So like my kids, they have to pay if you get a designated spot that's covered or in a garage, that's different.
Yeah.
But if you
But
don't,
minimum
you
parking.
still have to pay like $20 a month for parking just to park in the parking lot.
Which
You're
is-
required to do.
Which the parking lot is a code requirement of the
Yes.
units existing. So, okay. Should we move on?
We killed that one. Yeah.
Okay.
So
All
we'll
right,
move
Kendra.
on to we'll move on to the rent increases. So for the Hearthstone and the Lodge, we did have capital needs assessments done. The Lodge was running about 4,000 and the Hearthstone was about 3,000. I did talk to our HUD rep, like how's the best practice of submitting this budget? Because we do need an increase in our reserves to take care of some items. She said it's fine to ask for the full amount, realize you're not going to get the full amount based on HUD's budget because their budget was even shortened this year. But what she did suggest is to also submit a letter of the items that are really in need. And so we had what we tried to look at is what was between 2 to 3 years. And suggest that, hey, we want for the lodge, we have some windows that need replaced. We have some ADA items that need to get fixed. And then there was some siding rotting, along with our capital needs assessment person said that HUD doesn't wants the actual pull cords back in place. So we added that into our analysis. However, I also put in our letter, if this is not the case, if HUD is okay with the pendant that we selected and the pendants that we have at these properties, then this need is obviously not needed. But that was for the lodge. The Hearthstone had some different issues. They did have some ADA issues along with countertop fridges. So I don't know. I'm guessing their fridges must stick out past the countertops. So that was kind of a request. And then they also had the same emergency situation with the pull cords. So we submitted for the full amount. What that looks like is we requested 7.57% operational. and 49.29% capital reserves. And then for the Hearthstone, it was 8.79% operational and 30.11 for capital reserves. What the operational cost increase entailed was mainly insurance increases. The Hearthstone went up like 20%, but that was probably because they just had a fire incident. I also requested that they fully fund the maintenance position. LHDC has been funding that position, or a portion of that position, because based on what they approve for rents, it never comes back to be enough. And then I also added carpet cleaning back in. They took it out last year and said I had to submit it through reserves, but I'm adding it back because it's truly an operational cost for these properties. So that's where they're at. For the,
But recall, so at Hearthstone and Lodge, the residents actually don't realize that rent increase. It's more what HUD ends up paying on their voucher.
Have an idea.
Yeah, so that's the problem now is when you submit these, you don't know what they're gonna give you.
Especially right now, I know.
Right, and so it is even more complicated because it'll take us longer.
Yeah.
So my gut's telling me, depending on how long the shutdown lasts, we may not know until December, January.
and it's probably going to be even further than that. Usually we don't find out from HUD until like February, March, and the Lodge's contract renews December 1st and the Hearthstone renews January. So a lot of the times LHA is having to upfront money for these properties. If we have higher payroll costs or higher insurance costs, they have to upfront money until we get it approved. Now, these properties do have a 5-year contract renewal, so regardless, they still get some money coming in. It's not like they stop the money. It's just we don't know what the increase is going to be, and we usually have to go backwards and do a gross rent potential back to their actual contract date. So for the suites in Zinnia, they are, the suites is federally funded with PBV vouchers, partially from MHP and partially from LHA. We are leaving their voucher rates the same. We didn't ask for an increase, partially because one, we're in shortfall. And so if we asked for an increase, we usually try to match what MHP will give us, and we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we left those at the same rates. These rates have been there for a couple of years now. And then the Zinnia rates is state funded. They actually did give them voucher rates at really the 2024 level. So I didn't see an increase coming from them as well. Our other properties.
Are you gonna go, are you specifically on Zinnia?
What's that?
Do you have a section on Zinnia? Or do we pull that out?
Do you have
I
a
didn't
slide specific for Zinnia?
No, Zinnia is just, I mean, it's just their operational budget is there that we're proposing.
It's different in that it's not necessarily a budget that we have control over, because that's really something that Element has control over. So we're a third-party contractor in that situation. So this group and the board don't necessarily go over their operational budget in the way that we do for the suite, simply because it's a different company and they're contracting with us in the management world. That makes sense.
So for all our other properties, we kind of did an analysis to see what our average rent was for the whole unit population, along with what we're receiving. And because some of our properties do have a lot of HCV and some of them have PBV units, we decided a 0% increase is going to be due this year. That affects all the other LIHTC properties. The only one that would be really struggling is AMSA, and to even increase that, we're just gonna cause a bigger problem. That property only has a very limited amount of 30% units. The rest of them are all 50% units. So it's going to be a struggle if we have 7 or 8 right now and we can't fill them at the 1412, the 1250. And right now only one has been approved for the 1098. So we would have to reevaluate if they're still having struggles and if we can even go down any further, or what we would have to accommodate in the budget. And we already had to accommodate several things in the budget for AMSA. So does anybody have any questions on the rent increases? Next is the 2026 fair market rent standards. So we are going to ask the board to adopt the 2026 fair market rents. What that means, though, is because 2024 fair market rents were still higher than 2026, anybody that was already at those 2024 fair markets will be frozen. If they request an increase, we can't really go above those rents. But if for any landlord that is below the 2026 rate, the 2026 fair market rents would apply. And so I added 2024 so you can kind of see 2024 had a big increase, which also attributed to our shortfall in our voucher funding. And it's not even up to that level yet again. So
places. This is for our housing choice voucher program. And so this is when we are working with many external landlords as well as ourselves. So this is setting up the amounts that voucher assistance will provide.
This is where it gets really interesting. So when you see that we don't set the fair market rents, but we have to utilize the fair market rents. And so when we were in the shortfall conversation, so we know we're in shortfall, we're reducing the number of vouchers that we have, we're going through all the steps HUD requires us, but then they said, if fair market rents are adjusted and the landlords request them, what was it? Then we have to do it. So you kind of see this, the problem with the system is you're trying to manage shortfall, but yet somebody else sets fair market rents. And then if the outside landlords request it, then you have to provide it.
And if it's over the fair market rent that the client is allowed, then the tenant has to bear that cost, that extra cost.
So there, to your point earlier where it starts getting really confusing, it's because you have so many different systems that are making decisions that impact this thing over here. And so you're literally balancing multiple variables as you're working with external landlords, but then as you're working with internal, with us, with people that have vouchers.
Mhm.
Why is the 2 bedrooms black?
That looks like a link.
no, I just did a screenshot, so it may have been black because I was clicking on it at the time. So
That doesn't have any meaning. That's
No.
all.
yeah, no, I may have had it clicked. That's probably all, because it's just a screenshot from HUD's website. So we'll move into the property budgets. As you can see, Aspen Meadows, the neighborhood, what this is down at the bottom is it lets you know how many HCV vouchers we have in there. And if we were to get 100% of their rents, we could get another 23,000 for the senior property, another 14,000 for Aspen Meadows on an annual basis to kind of get a better of what our net income might be. We are really strapped at AMSA, and we're going to have to maybe next year try to figure out some things because haven't been able to pay developer fees at that property, which go into LHA. just because it's so strapped operationally with the number of units and the AMI in those units. It also had some things in the beginning. It was similar to VOM where AMSA, when it went through rehab, you had to keep the people at the rents they were already at. So it wasn't like bringing brand new people in at new limits. They were already below the limits to begin with. So to get them up is straining because they're leaving and bringing people in as well. Aspen Meadow neighborhood, we're doing, pretty good. I think we're in the process of looking at we're at the 15-year mark, which usually the investor, we request the investor if they want to come out of that property. So we're in the works of doing that right now for AMN.
So Kendra, just one question. I understand what a balloon payment is. So are we doing this every year through 29?
We're trying, yes. So we will have, or we go back in and we refinance. Like if I can't, there's no way I'm going to probably be able to get the actual mortgage down where it needs to be by the time the balloon payment comes due. So it may be a refinancing, or if it's at that point where we're doing resyndication, it would get rolled into that as well. It would get paid off as new investors come in.
Context on this. 4 years ago, when we kind of jumped in, these three saw it. A lot of the properties were budgeting in the negative. And so what we were doing is having to absorb it out of the general fund. And so what we've really been focused on is trying to keep property doing that so it doesn't negatively impact the general fund. But at the same time, we also saw that when you set the budget, why you see the vouchers called out separately is because those vouchers are, because they're not project-based vouchers, we don't want to count on them in the revenue stream. So we're looking at it after the fact saying, well, if we maintain the 7 vouchers in those locations, this is what it'll be. But we're not putting it in the operational budget because they can move the person. So you're seeing a pretty conservative budgeting approach, but we're trying to balance the system so that we don't start pulling and creating other problems that have to fix.
Got your stage ready?
Yeah.
For the downtown campus, which is Briarwood and Village on Main, you'll see a significant decrease in utilities. We actually budgeted utilities based on Village Place because we weren't quite sure once the solar panels were installed what our utility costs would be. But doing an evaluation, we were able to reduce that budget this year. Briarwood, you will only usually you see 2 budgets for Briarwood Apartments and Briarwood Office. Since we're in the stages of possibly selling Briarwood, I didn't budget anything at the office. So there's no community manager budgeted down to this property, no maintenance tech budgeted down to this property. And that's why you see the reductions there. Mainly because if we do sell this in the first quarter, I want to make sure the other property can take on those costs. So that's what's going on there.
Again, for perspective, on Village on Main, I think part of the utility of the housing authority being connected to the city is when we look at things like solar panels, it actually lets us bring in the departments because in this one, I think LPC put in 300,000.
Yeah.
So we're leveraging different assets, and by bringing LPC in with the solar panels, we're going to combine that with battery storage that Hot River's bringing in at some of our substations. So as we look at the electric goal of moving to 100% renewable by 2030, we'll get there. and we look at distributed energy and was trying to manage load, this actually facilitates us. So starting to see some economies of scale where we can bring in different operations to support each other goals.
And there's no big things with Fall River and Spring Creek. You will see some decreases in the admin costs, but that was due to how we allocated our assistants across the portfolio. We spread them a little further and not had them dedicated at a property because we really want our assistants to be able to be functional at every property if we have somebody on vacation. So you'll see decreases in the admin there.
Part of that's connected.
What's that?
I'm gonna jump in. This is where Zinnia started. This is where Zinnia started playing an interesting role in this, in terms of what they were wanting to do, and what we saw and what they were proposing. And again, that we're a third-party manager. Is we and moving into a full-time manager position and some other things, and as we were looking at the system, it triggered something to where it actually started penalizing properties that we own in terms of the operational expenses. So working with Kendra on this, and Molly and Lauren, I made the decision to continue the same budgeting approach that we had with the properties that we own. Because had we have done what they wanted to do at Zinnia, it actually would have taken Aspen Meadows Senior into the decade. And so we had to have a fairly direct conversation about, we can't allow this project that we don't own to negatively impact the financials and the operating side of the properties that we do own, to balance out. So that's some context to what Kendra said.
I'm just gonna give everyone a 15-minute heads up that the construction team isn't expecting us in about 15 minutes.
Out of curiosity, I see meth reserve, this one, it's not any of the other ones, but there's no money in it. Is something that big a couple of years ago on this property, or?
That was my question as well. What?
We were trying to build reserves. But then as the operational expenses continue to increase and we don't necessarily have the revenue increases or pushing the rents, that's one of the first things that we take off to make sure our core operating.
So it'd be nice, but haven't been able to make it work yet.
Yeah.
Or recently.
We made it work, and then as expenses continue to drive, forcing us to get sharper.
Well, I mean, Mercy, we deal with a lot of meth contamination too, so I understand.
Yeah.
I was curious why it was only this property that had it. Is it just where the issues that?
No, at one point we had them in several properties.
Almost all of
Our
it.
goal was to have them in all.
Our goal was having it all, but the operating expenses. Brings. And we'll kind of touch on that when we get to the fund balance, what we're trying to do.
Well, on Fall River, the utilities decreased significantly too. Was that the difference between budget and actual for 2025, and we're just budgeting less? That one?
No, so what we did a deeper dive this year into the utilities. We were actually seeing some of these properties, they started out with a budget, and sometimes there was just never time to actually deep dive. And now that I have a fourth accountant, we were able to say, okay, well, we're over budgeted in this section. And so let's carve some of that off, because there are some other needs operationally in the contract maintenance costs that are needed. So if you see reductions there, it's because we kind of did a deeper dive, and their utilities have always been budgeted higher. So it's always kind of been a cost saving feature, but we took a different approach this year. So then you have the Hearthstone and the Lodge, and they budget down to the very minimal net income that you possibly can. And this is where you can see kind of the difference between what we're actually receiving as of last year for reserve and what we're requesting or what our capital needs assessment said we should be getting on an annual basis, based on the age of the property and what they were seeing. So we'll see what they approve. It's probably going to be a very small amount for capital, and we'll see what they do for the budget. I have a new rep this year, so it's always different when you get a new rep. And then
HUD approves the reserve replacement separate from the operation budget side, I'm assuming, right?
They do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we
It-
see not as high of an increase as we want, whichever one, I mean, it's whatever lever, like if the reserve replacement isn't approved for that amount, we just cut that out of the budget.
Yeah, they'll give me the, like, hey, we're gonna approve this to this, and here's what your operational increase is gonna be. The Hover campus, it is basically budgeted based on their LPA. So we have to start that off, what they actually budgeted when they went to Chaffa and closed on the property. So that's what this budget is built off of and what it's based on. We won't know exactly what kind of costs we're going to see on a utility basis and operational basis until we start diving into it, until the property's leased. So this is what their budget will look like for 2026. And then you have the suites and Zinnia. Pretty much all these properties, we have to submit our budgets to the investors. The investors can make changes to these budgets. They can say no to something. They can request, one time the suites, they said, well, don't you normally budget for damages? I didn't like to budget for damages because it's really kind of an in and out situation, because even though you're charging for damages, you're not going to get that revenue from it. We usually never see the revenue from the tenant for those damages. But in that case scenario, I also budget the exact same amount in my bad debt section. So if I budget 10,000 in damages, I'm going to budget 10,000 in my bad debt. So it takes it really kind of right back out. But that's kind of some of the things you'll see. Some of the things, we added Leo's position at the senior properties last year, and AMSA, their investor said, is this a new position? And I had to justify. They didn't take it out, so that was good. So Zinnia is completely third party. So I'm going to present this to them. We are presenting this as a full-time community manager for them. We didn't do the split community manager and assistant. One, because it was affecting our portfolio, but two, our assistants weren't built to be 100%. Their positions are getting paid less because they're not supposed to take on the full responsibility of a property either. So that was kind of a concern as well. So this is kind of where they stand. They could come back and say, no to some of these pieces, and then we'll have to see where we go from there. Next is the general fund.
Pause for a moment, Kendra. We have a question at the end of the table.
Okay. Might have to speak up because I can't hear you back there sometimes.
I'll repeat it.
Okay, thanks.
And that seems to be why there's, positive outcome at that campus. Is that we're just sort of late in that process and the develop fees are just less, or so I'm just curious about how that's working out.
So the question is on the suites developer fee payment went down by half from 25 to 26, and that seems to be helping the financial situation there overall. So wondering what the reason it went down.
Because we're almost paid. We've almost paid all the developer fees, and we actually might. I'm waiting. We still have the elevator cost, which is $70,000. We actually have really good cash flow there. So I might be able to actually pay off all the developer fees, and that $40,000 won't count, but I did put a little in there. That'll be the last. So then all the developer fees will be paid by the suites. And the only two properties left to pay developer fees will be Village on Main and Aspen Meadows Senior Apartments. And Village on Main has a hefty cash flow as well, but that's partly because they have 18 PBV vouchers and 18 HCV vouchers, which has really brought in extra cash for those properties. So that's where that one's at. So that will definitely probably be gone next year. And then we have our general fund budget. So our reoccurring revenue is at, $1,000,004. Then we'll also have the expenses along with, we took on some additional debt, but basically with Spring Creek pays LHA and then LHA pays DOH. And then a capital reserve, which is mainly for the snow removal trucks that are in operation to make sure that we can fully functionally replace them when needed. So right now our developer fees based on new projects coming in, so Ascent and Zinnia, up those for management fees, along with putting our money into investment accounts, gave us a good, $180,000 in interest for this year. So that's where we're looking at. Our fund balance is going to be, what we need is 626. We did put some placeholders in there. We wanted a placeholder, a 50K contingency for emergency one-time costs. We've kind of seen that throughout the years where, like for example, the Hearthstone, you can also, when they have a fire, sometimes LHA has to front the money until the insurance funds come in. We also see just certain needs that happen throughout the year. One of them might be dishwashers at AMSA. We might decide to do a one-time, but this is all based, Harold would have to reprove any money that comes out of that contingency. And we also added a 25K placeholder for any pre-development projects approved by Harold. And that would be like projects that we believe are LHA properties. We would have an ownership in those and need maybe lawyer costs or what other costs have we incurred on those properties?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Enough to get
so-
started to know whether you have a project.
Yeah. So we added that. So that's where our LHA general fund stands at this year. And then kind of we added okay, never mind. I was going to go straight to general fund. I thought that was next. Okay, this is our
Just a
voucher
moment,
program.
Harold's gonna
I thought you
comment.
were on general fund. Oh. So on the
She's probably going
general
to-
fund, a couple of things. One, historically, again, dating back when we took over the general fund, we've always pulled down on fund balance. And what we've been intentionally trying to do is to reduce the amount we're pulling down on fund balance over time. And you can see that last year was 903. I think the year before it was like 1.2 million. This year it's 626,000. So goal is to get that to zero in terms of drawing down fund balance. And I'll talk about that on the fund balance.
All right, go for it, Kendra. It is 10:27, so I just told them we're going to be running a couple minutes behind, but mindful would
So
be
this
good.
is our housing choice voucher program. So you'll see from the decrease here in admin to the increase here in admin, I did put more percentage because we are getting administrative expense on several positions, both HCV related, the front desk and accounting related. So they got a higher percentage of being funded by the HCV program or our voucher programs in general. And then we kind of leave a balance on our HCV program so that we're kind of in line with what HUD's expecting us to be, so that we're not utilizing full reserves, but getting to a point where it's acceptable reserves to have left and not be in shortfall. And then we have our single room occupancy. This is basically the in-between project that we administer. So it's administering 8 vouchers for the in-between. That is also funded by HUD. And there's a little admin expense added to that too for the HCV specialists that do the recertifications on that.
Glenn is asking, what is the single room occupancy? It's a specific voucher program run through HUD.
Yeah, it was a mod rehab program. So they could apply and say they were going to modify or rehab so many units. And then HUD would give them like a project-based voucher to support those units. They had 10, but they actually only ended up doing 8. So that's what they're down to now. The next one is we wanted to give you kind of a picture of what our general fund analysis is looking like, what our reoccurring funding versus our operational costs. Now realize you're going to see the general fund is not going to match because it's going to be general fund plus our voucher admin fees that, funding that comes in along with Briarwood at the moment. And I tried to separate Briarwood where I could, because if those are going to come off the books, then those will no longer be reoccurring revenue for us. So we're at about 1.698 for reoccurring revenue coming in. With our operational staff, so that is 11 positions, along with the admin, which is legal costs, training, maintenance is some of the costs related to inspections. So those are the HCV costs that we have to do for inspections, along with some other things. And then our total operational with 100% operational staff is 1.7. So we kind of have a deficit there of about $16,000. But then we also have some additional city costs. So we have a device specialist that we fund at 100% for our copiers and our computer needs. The executive director is at 20%. Molly's position is at 20%. The accounting manager who processes our payroll is at 10%. Sarah is at 43.5%. The city attorney is a flat fee. And then you have the rental space, which is just individuals on the HCV side, what we pay the city for their rental space.
So for perspective on that, when the change occurred, I think between Jillian's position, the executive director, I think they're at 250. Looking at about 250, and then a single chief financial officer was at 100. So you had 2 positions eating 350 versus this is kind of again showing that economy of scale. And to be honest, we're not including, I think it's in there, but part of this overall agreement is risk management, purchasing, human resources,
Senior services.
I mean, so there's a lot more that we're bringing in based on this relationship. So again, an economy of scale. Hey, Kendra, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the fund balance. Can you just go there? Because we're running short on time.
Yep.
So this is some great work that Kendra's done. And I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of lines. So you see, again, taking a conservative approach in budgeting, you see the fund balance then in year 1 at 511 overall, and then you see it rising. So we did an inflationary increase in that. Again, the goal of that is to draw it down to 0. And what that's really showing me is that in the typical financial modeling for housing authorities, you live off of your development revenue that's coming in with your projects. And so that's the drawdown on fund balance. So the projects on their own, the system is, from a budgetary perspective, not great because it's really designed when you live off of the development fees to draw down on projects over time, but at the same time, one of the things we need to be cognizant of is the amount of land that we can actually develop on. So as you slow this down, what it's showing me is that when you get out to 16, 17, 28, 29, 30, 31, you see at the end of the day that we're negative fund balance. And you can, so one of the things that we wanted to do is create a 3-month operating reserve. So that's a restricted fund balance. And then what you're seeing below that is the unrestricted fund balance that we have. So strategically, we also didn't include the Atwood project where we have third-party management that'll bring in management fees because they have to go through the LIHTC this year, so it's not guaranteed. We have the Hartstone and Lodge conversion, and then we have sale of the Briarwood property. So those are all things that can benefit the ending fund balance as we look at it over time. So what you'll see is that negative will go away if these things start hitting. This is telling me that we have to have a project come online 27 to bring in the development fees, and let's say 27, 28, and then we need another one 29 or 30. The other thing that we're finding in this is that the traditional affordable housing model is probably not the model that we need to look at in perpetuity because of the lack of ongoing operating dollars. And so what we're really starting to focus on is how we would bring in, put in place a mixed income model. So when we talk about mixed income, thinking about it will include affordable, it would include income restricted attainable. So I think we will cap a certain amount of units and rents at around 70 or 80% AMI. And then it has a market rate component to it. And what that does is it starts driving up the ongoing revenue that you're going to bring in over time with these projects. So that then starts offsetting your operational deficit that you have that we're experiencing. So you could use these mixed income models to offset your financial gaps in your more traditional affordable housing. Boulder Housing Partners, they do a version of this. And where they do have market rate included in some of their affordable
Is that Willoughby?
product. Pardon?
Is that Willoughby?
No, Willoughby, that's Boulder County, city of Boulder. So there's a couple of projects. We literally had a meeting on one yesterday that I think is pretty ripe for this. That will allow us to then maybe set this in motion. And we modeled it on another project to give you perspective. Once you get stabilization, about year 5, I think you start pulling, I think the number that we modeled said it pull in 300, 400,000. But when you get to around year 8 or 10, you're pulling in about $1 million a year. And it's because you're mixing in all of these units into your portfolio versus solely being reliant on your traditional affordable housing mix. And that's what's going to give financial stability to the housing authority in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. So I know that needing new projects, those year timeframes, is something that you guys have talked about a long time. So this is not new this year.
No.
So yeah, just
No.
in case anybody was wondering.
And if we do it right, and the fund balance support for operations where Kendra's modeling it in a conservative way, if we take that down to 0, now all of a sudden you can start seeing that the fund balance will grow by that amount in the end. And so we're trying to get 3 things at once, but it really is going to take that mixed income model to do it.
So I will just let everyone know that the community food share, we have a number of residents outside waiting to come in. And if there was a few, I would just let them do it in the background, but it'll be pretty loud if they come in. Just FYI.
Well, the development fee is like one time fee, so
Yeah.
we can't plan on it, it's not reoccurring or anything like that. So I think, that's kind of like kicking the can down the road, really just bringing the income in. But stopping, or turning positive or just zeroing out the general fund balance is really like we gotta get to.
Right.
And that
Come
either mixed
back
use
to
or
it,
get additional brand new revenue stream. What about increasing our existing revenue stream of like the admin fees, annual fees we're charging? Are we able to do that at all, or is that kind of
Well, you're
built in,
dependent on
we're
the
stuck
revenue,
on-
you're
yeah.
dependent on individual properties, which
Right.
is why the out clause is the mixed income, because there you can treat it. You have different levels of income and you can't increase your management fees on your market rate. That's really supporting its overall project.
Okay,
Or
any other questions? I think we're probably gonna cut it off here. Sarah, did you have anything that you really need to tell us?
We could chat about that as we walk too.
All
right.
Meetings.
Thank you, Kendra.
All right, bye.
Hey.